Good morning guys, I simplified engraving for you down to a single command, noting that this can only be used for engraving and that your geometry should be in its final position. In other words, if you're engraving at 0, you're not going to engrave anything. If you want to engrave to 0.25 deep, you're going to have to move your engraving down to 0.25. So the cutter tip is going to follow the Z position inside your Rhino. So on usage, very simple. Mac 3D engrave, select your curves, press enter. On the command line, let me explain the options. I'm going to try and keep this simple. Your tolerance is how closely it's going to follow this curve. 0.1 should be ample for this kind of engraving. Clearance is how far above the material the cutter is going to move when it transitions from one piece to another. Cut feed is how fast are you actually going to cut on the line itself. Travel feed is how fast are you going to move between lines when the cutter comes up, moves over, comes back down. Spindle speed is spindle speed, how fast the spindle is going to run. Safe Z retract is going to be when the code is finished cutting, how high do you want the cutter to move out of the operator's way so they can swap this piece of mother of pearl and put the next piece of mother of pearl in. I think 50 is safe, but you'll have to just double check with the operators. If they're continually cutting themselves on cutters, you might have to increase that over there. Header and footer leave to yes. I've optimized this for our mill which runs Mac 3. Most mills running Mac 3 will be okay with this set to yes. Some machines that are not Mac 3 compatible, just leave it on no. Currently for us everything is yes. So with default set here, you're pretty much safe to get going. Alright, just press enter. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. I'm going to overwrite this particular piece of code. I'm going to overwrite that particular piece of code, which is this one here. When you click save, it will pop open Notepad for you, and you can review the code inside there. Sorry, I set up for a much smaller recording window. This is your header code, which will do everything including turning the spindle on, transition at high speed to where we're starting, then at our cut feed rate, cut the first curve, and you'll see a little jump in between them. It'll tell you when it's moving from one curve to the next. So it will jump up, go over, and finish all these curves. If you want to test this, since we don't have a simulation, you can use the command. I'm just going to take all of those and move them over a little bit. You can go GcodeRead, which is the second command in this email. Go to your desktop and find that file we just generated, which is testcode.nc, and you will see what it's done. It started. Where did it start? It started here, came up, over, went down, followed the path, came up, went over, went down, followed the path, and then worked its way around a couple of the cuts. So you can see your clearance in action, you can see your safe retract in action. It also is a good way for you if you've lost your original geometry from which you created a file, to read that file back into the system and pick your geometry again. Okay? Thanks guys. Cheers.